Welcome to this explainer. I am so glad you're joining us today. If you've ever tried to learn a new language, hit a frustrating, massive wall, and just ended up giving up, honestly, you are far from alone. Millions of people get stuck in this exact same start and stop journey every single year. But what if I told you the problem isn't your brain? It's not your age, and it definitely isn't your natural talent. What if the problem is literally just the method you're using? Today, we are diving deep into the actual science of language acquisition. We're going to explore how we can completely ditch that robotic, boring memorization and instead tap into the incredibly powerful science-based principle of habituation. Because by using meaningful exposure, repetition, and active use, we can actually rewire our brains. So let's jump right in.
Let's make this super real by looking at a classic trap that almost all of us have fallen into at some point. Let's talk about Faribor's. Out of sheer necessity, he decides he absolutely must learn English. So he starts. He signs up for a class, buys all the right books, and for a few weeks, he's doing amazing. But slowly, you know how it goes, that initial excitement just kind of fades. The deep why behind his goal gets blurry. He breaks his consistency, and eventually, he quits. Fast forward a year, life throws another hurdle his way, and he starts the whole process all over again. And here is the real tragedy of this start-stop cycle. When he finally restarts, he realizes just how much time he completely wasted in the middle. If he had just maintained a minimal level of consistency, he'd already be fluent.
So to break that cycle, we really have to rethink how we anchor our motivation. A lot of the time, we try to hype ourselves up by thinking about all the cool things we're going to gain. But neuroscientifically speaking, our brains actually derive way more urgency from visualizing what we are losing. Think about these severe, real-world consequences of quitting. You are actively cutting yourself off from global knowledge and resources. You're essentially handing high-paying, international career opportunities, jobs you actually have the hard skills for, right over to someone else simply because they speak the language. You are locking yourself out of advanced educational pathways and falling behind people who are capitalizing on global trends. When you clearly define your personal why through the lens of what you stand to lose, well, quitting stops looking like a harmless little break, and it starts looking like a massive sacrifice.
Before we can build the right system, we've got to clear out the garbage, right? Let's rapidly dismantle some of the false beliefs that are probably holding you back. First up, I'm too old. Completely false. While passive learning does decrease with age, active learning works brilliantly no matter how old you are. Focus and correction actually build new neural pathways at literally any age. Second myth, those learn in your sleep audio tracks. The harsh truth is that learning requires friction. Your brain has to solve a problem. You just can't bypass the hard work. Third, this weird obsession with perfect grammar. The entire point of a language is just to transfer an idea from your brain to someone else's. If they understand you, you've succeeded. Fourth, I need to memorize thousands of advanced words. Ask yourself, how many complex, poetic proverbs do you use in your native language every single day? You need a solid foundation, not an entire dictionary of obscure terms. And finally, accents. Listen, as long as you're pronouncing the word correctly enough to be understood, a native accent is absolutely not mandatory. Honestly, an accent simply proves you speak more than one language, and that's something to be proud of.
All of this brings us to a really profound core shift in how we approach language. For years, we've been conditioned to treat language like it's a history test, relying heavily on robotic memorization. We stare at these tedious vocabulary lists, we wait until our sentences are absolutely flawless before we even dare to speak, and ultimately, we just burn out. But the actual science of language acquisition tells us something entirely different. We don't formally learn a language in a vacuum. We habituate to it. Natural habituation involves meaningful exposure, having active curiosity, integrating the language into your daily life, and, this is huge, giving yourself permission to speak with glaring mistakes. It is all about surrounding yourself with the language and actively engaging with the friction it creates in your brain.
There's a really wonderful quote by Naval Ravikant that goes, "Read what you love until you love to read." And this is the exact philosophy we need for language acquisition. Think about it. If you try to habituate yourself using dry textbooks or random podcasts about topics you couldn't care less about, your brain is going to reject the effort completely. But if you love football or cooking or tech, consume content about that specific thing in your target language. Because you already care about the subject, your intrinsic curiosity naturally takes over. You genuinely want to know what the article is saying, and that intrinsic desire is the secret sauce that makes the difficult brain work of learning feel completely organic and basically effortless.
But what exactly should you be consuming?
Well, this is where the science gets very specific. To maximize your learning without causing overwhelming frustration, you need to follow what's called the optimal input rule. Essentially, the content you consume should be 80% comprehensible and 20% challenging. If you are a beginner and you put on an advanced academic lecture, it is literally just noise. On the flip side, if you only read things you 100% know, you aren't growing at all. You have to place yourself just one single step above your current level. That way, you understand the vast majority of the context, but that 20% friction forces your brain to be curious, figure out new words, and actively build those new neural pathways. All right, so now that we know exactly how to expose our brains to the language, let's look at the actionable solution. This is the definitive two-step formula required to master literally any language. It is incredibly simple, yet completely non-negotiable. Step 1 is consistency. Step 2 is iteration and correction. If anyone on the internet promises you fluency in a few short weeks, please know they're just after your money. Genuine learning takes time, and it requires these two exact steps working in absolute harmony. I love to think of the relationship between these two steps like a car. Consistency is the engine. Without it, you simply don't move forward at all. If you stop putting in the daily time, the car stalls. But an engine alone isn't going to get you where you want to go. If you practice the exact same mistakes every single day without ever changing or adapting, you're basically driving at 100 miles an hour in the completely wrong direction. And that is exactly where iteration comes in. Iteration, which means getting feedback and actively correcting your mistakes, is the steering wheel. It ensures that the forward momentum you're generating through consistency is actually taking you toward fluency. So, how do we start this engine without flooding it right out of the gate? Well, the magic number here is 20. One of the absolute biggest red flags in language learning is when someone says, starting tomorrow, I am going to study for 10 hours a day. That is a doomed promise. Your brain will rebel against it. Instead, you need to start incredibly small. Commit to just 20 to 30 minutes a day. That is it. Make studying something you owe yourself in small, manageable doses, rather than creating this massive debt of time you can never realistically repay. Trust me, a daily 20-minute habit will absolutely always beat a weekend binge. Let's turn those 20 minutes into a concrete daily action plan featuring 4 really critical steps. First up, record your speaking. Language learning is slow. It's kind of like losing weight. You just don't notice it in the mirror day to day. By recording your voice on day 1 and then listening back to it on day 60, you actively prove to your brain that your invisible daily efforts are actually compounding. Second, embrace mistakes to beat perfectionism. You must boldly make errors if you want to actively communicate. Third, demand strict feedback. Remember, this is your steering wheel to correct your path and prevent bad habits from cementing in your brain forever. And finally, speak and write. You have to force actual output. No one ever became fluent simply by reading textbooks. You have to take the information in and actively push it back out into the world. Now, to execute this action plan today, we are incredibly blessed with modern tools that can truly supercharge the whole process. For starters, you can absolutely leverage AI to instantly explain grammar rules or get immediate feedback on your writing. It's like having a tutor in your pocket. However, we are social creatures. Joining group classes is a fantastic way to build long-term momentum and share the journey with others. And please don't overlook the immense value of a strict human teacher. While AI is amazing for the basics, a teacher who actually listens to the subtle nuance of your speech and provides targeted, personalized correction is just an unparalleled blessing for your progress. We have covered a lot of ground today in this explainer, shifting our mindset from robotic memorization to active, contextual habituation. I want to leave you with this final, inspiring thought. Nothing good comes without consistency. Master the art of returning. Look, you are going to miss a day. You might even miss an entire week. But failing isn't taking a break. Failing is refusing to return. So go find a topic you absolutely love and start your 20-minute habit tomorrow. Master the art of returning, and the language will finally be yours. But before you go, I want you to ask yourself this. What incredible opportunity have you already missed out on by letting the start-stop cycle control you? And are you really willing to let it happen again? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.